I'm going to tell you a story about what I did last night. Last night, I went out with a really good friend of mine in the center of the city. Normally, we have a lot of fun together, but last night was not fun at all. When I arrived in the center of the city, my friend had already eaten dinner. He could have told me before. I was really hungry the whole night. After that, we wanted to go to the cinema. Great idea, right? But we spent a long time walking very slowly, talking about everything in our lives. So when we arrived at the cinema, the film had already started. We had missed the first 15 minutes of the film and the trailers. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was when we left the cinema, public transport had already stopped, and it had started to rain, so we had to walk all the way home, 5 kilometers in the cold, pouring rain. As you can imagine, when I arrived home, I was very tired and grumpy. So next time, I'm going to have to manage my time and be more responsible. Right now, I'm going to be more responsible, and I'm going to return to the subject of this video. Today, we're going to talk about grammar. We're going to talk about a form of the past tense that we use when we want to talk about an action that happened before another action. You have already studied other forms of the past, like the past simple and the present perfect. When we use the past perfect, we need to order the events of a sentence in a logical way. We need to think about it like a story, that a story has a beginning, middle, and end. You might think of the past like this. The past perfect is the beginning, the past simple is the middle, and the present perfect is the end. Let's look at an example from my story. When I met my friend for dinner, he said he had already eaten. In this sentence, there are 2 actions. I met my friend for dinner. My friend said he already ate. Even though met my friend comes first in the sentence, we have to think about the story that the sentence is telling. If we think about it in that way, then the first action that happened was my friend ate dinner. The second action is that my friend said to me that he ate dinner. When we talk about this first action, we need to use the past perfect. When we talk about the second or subsequent actions, we need to use the past simple. Since you already know the past simple, we're going to focus on how to create the past perfect. Let's look at the form of the past perfect. It's the subject plus had, which is the past of the verb have, plus the past participle, plus the rest of the sentence. It's very similar to the present perfect in this sense, except we use had instead of have. In this sentence, the subject is he plus had plus the past participle eaten. You might remember that eaten is an irregular past participle. Let's look at another example. The film had already started when we arrived at the cinema. Now, what's the first action and what's the second action? The film had already started is the first action because it is in the past perfect. We arrived at the cinema is in the past simple tense, so it must be the second action. Now let's look at the form of the past perfect in this sentence. Remember that it's the subject, the film, plus had, plus the past participle, and then the rest of the sentence. In this case, started is a regular verb, which you can see because it ends in ed. This is the affirmative form of the past perfect tense. Now let's look at the negative form of the past perfect tense. It's very similar to the affirmative form. It's the subject plus had not plus the past participle and then the rest of the sentence. In this case, you can say had not, which is the long form, or you can say hadn't, which is the short form. In the case of this sentence, the subject is he, my friend, then hadn't, then the irregular past participle eaten, and then the rest of the sentence comes after that. The only big difference between the affirmative and the negative form is that in the affirmative form, it's had, and in the negative form, it's hadn't. Now let's look at the question form of the past perfect. You might remember that in the question form of any verb tense in English, you always have a helping verb, then the subject, and then the main verb. The past perfect is the same. You need the helping verb had, then the subject, then the past participle, then the rest of the question, and finally a question mark instead of a full stop. In this case, we have had plus the subject, which is your friend, plus the irregular past participle eaten. Now you're going to do some exercises to practice what you learned about the past perfect. In exercise 6a, you have to underline the past perfect and circle the past simple. In the first sentence, I had never participated in a parade until we celebrated Carnival in Brazil. Had participated is past perfect, so we must underline both parts of the past perfect verb. And celebrated is a past simple regular verb, so we must circle it. In exercise 6b, you must complete the sentence with the correct form of the verb. All of these sentences will ask you to use the past perfect tense. For example, in the first sentence, it's asking us to use not and study. This means we must write the negative form of the past perfect verb. So remember that it's hadn't. Study is a regular verb, so it's studied. And the answer is hadn't studied. In exercise 6c, you're going to do a little bit of creative writing. You must write a short story where you use one or more of the sentence parts in the exercise. Let's imagine that I want to use the example, there was a fire in the kitchen. For example, I could write a sentence where I say, there was a fire in the kitchen because I had forgotten that I was making a lasagna in the oven. Now try doing the 3 exercises and do your best. Good luck!